My father abandoned me." Those words shattered the silence as the boy stumbled onto the deserted road, wrists tied, voice shaking with a fear no child should ever feel. A Navy SEAL froze in disbelief, because the boy wasn't running from strangers. He was running from the criminals his own father had sold him to, and they were closing in fast. What the SEAL uncovered next would ignite a violent hunt, a ruthless gang, a secret organization, and a child whose extraordinary mind made him their most valuable target. Before the story begins, tell us in the comments what you think of the father who betrayed his own child, and let your voice be heard. Like, share, and subscribe, so this story can reach more people who need hope. A quiet suburban road lay under the gentle morning sun, its stillness almost too perfect for what waited ahead. Ethan Walker kept a steady pace as he ran along the empty stretch of pavement, each breath measured, each movement disciplined. Morning runs were the closest thing he had to peace. They helped him hold together the fragments of a life shaped by war, loss, and choices that carved deep into the soul. He no longer wore a uniform, but the mindset of a SEAL never really left. It lingered in his bones, in every instinct that whispered warnings even when nothing seemed wrong. Beside him ran Ranger, the German shepherd who had once served on missions far from this peaceful suburb. Ranger moved like a shadow with purpose. He did not run for play. He ran to stay sharp because the past had taught him that quiet moments often disguised danger. Ethan understood that too well. That was why he trusted the dog more than anyone else in the world. The morning air smelled of grass and warm asphalt. A bird chirped somewhere far off. To most people, it would have been idyllic. To Ethan, peaceful silence was something that invited caution. Too much quiet meant something was missing, something was off. And he felt that unsettling tickle low in his spine, the one that used to warn him when trouble waited behind a mud wall or a rusted gate in another country. Ranger felt it first. The dog slowed abruptly. His ears twitched, his posture tightening the way it only did when something was wrong. Ethan stopped immediately. He did not question it. Years of survival had conditioned him. When Ranger felt danger, it was already near. "What is it?" Ethan asked, his voice low, controlled. Ranger turned his head toward a patch of brush beside the road. The movement was too deliberate to be curiosity. The dog lowered his body slightly, ready to defend, ready to react. Ethan followed the direction of Ranger's gaze. He stepped carefully toward the bushes, barely making a sound. Then he heard it. A muffled sound, a tiny choked cry. Not an animal, not the wind. A human sound that carried fear so intense it pressed against the air itself. Ethan pushed the branches aside. A child lay curled on the dirt. His wrists were tied tightly with nylon cord. His mouth was sealed with dirty tape. His cheeks were streaked with dust, and his eyes were huge with terror. When he saw Ethan, he recoiled like a trapped creature that had been punished too many times to hope for rescue. Ethan felt his chest tighten. The world narrowed. Nothing from his years of combat had prepared him for the sight of a child abandoned in such fear. It struck him in places far older than war. It struck him where grief lived. "It's all right," Ethan murmured, lowering himself slowly, hands open, in a gesture that said, "I am not here to hurt you." Ranger approached, sniffing the air, then sat in front of the child. Not aggressive, just protective, a silent barrier. Ethan peeled the tape from the boy's mouth, slow enough not to tear skin, As soon as his mouth was free, the child gasped, breath shuddering violently. "Please," he whispered in a voice that had been cracked by crying, "please do not kill me. Please do not let them take me again. I will listen. I will be good." Ethan froze for a heartbeat. "No one is going to hurt you," he said softly, "not while I am here." The child trembled. His breaths came short, sharp, uneven. "What is your name?" Ethan asked. "Noah," the boy whispered. "Noah Jensen." The name trembled out like it feared being spoken. Ethan cut the cords around Noah's wrists. The boy flinched at every touch, not as if expecting pain, but as if pain was simply what life usually gave him. Ranger pushed gently against Noah's leg, as if telling him he was no longer alone. The dog's quiet presence softened something in the boy's expression. Just a little, but enough. Ethan scanned the road again. No people, no cars. But his instincts kept screaming that danger had passed through this place recently and might return at any moment. "Noah," Ethan said quietly, "who tied you up?" The boy swallowed, lips trembling. "Men," he whispered, "in a white van. They said Dad owed them. They said I was payment." Ethan felt a coldness that had nothing to do with the air. The child hesitated, then forced out the rest in a voice that seemed too small to carry so much pain. "Dad told them where I was. He told them to take me. He said he just did not want to die." Silence pressed down. Ethan did not breathe for several seconds. He had seen betrayal before. He had seen fear turn people into cowards. But a father giving up his own child out of terror, that was a cruelty Ethan could not comprehend. Noah shrank in on himself, eyes fixed on the ground. "It is not your fault," Ethan said gently. "Nothing about this is your fault." Noah did not respond. He was waiting for punishment, for abandonment, for confirmation that the world had no place for him. Ranger nudged him again. This time, Noah looked at the dog mildly confused, as if he did not understand why someone would choose to protect him. Ethan stood and lifted the boy into his arms. Noah stiffened, but did not fight. He simply accepted it, the way children who have been betrayed too many times accept whatever is happening because hoping hurts more. "We are leaving," Ethan said. "You are coming with me." Ranger took the lead, scanning every direction. The three of them moved down the road, away from the place where innocence had been tied up and discarded like something unwanted. Behind them, the quiet suburban world remained peaceful, but for Ethan, the morning had shifted into something else entirely. He did not know what would come next, but he knew one thing. Noah would never be alone again, not while he was breathing. A light breeze drifted across the suburban outskirts as the morning sun climbed higher, casting long, quiet shadows along the narrow road. The world appeared gentle, but Ethan Walker felt none of its calm. He carried Noah Jensen close, the boy's trembling settling into small, uneven breaths against his chest, while Ranger ran ahead with sharpened alertness, every movement filled with the silent oath of a guardian who had already decided whom he would protect. Ethan reached his truck parked near a set of aging oak trees. It was an older model he maintained himself, the kind of vehicle a man kept not for comfort, but because it had survived things with him. He opened the passenger door and settled Noah inside, fastening the seatbelt carefully. The boy clutched the fabric of Ethan's sleeve for a moment, a silent plea not to be left alone. Ethan placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder before shutting the door and walking around to the driver's side. Noah kept looking out the window, shoulders tight, eyes jumpy at every passing sound. That kind of fear was not new to Ethan. He had seen it in refugee camps, in war zones, in children who learned too early that adults could be dangerous. But seeing it here, in a quiet American suburb, created a heavy, simmering anger he forced himself to control. Ranger hopped into the back seat and sat so still it was as if he was carved from stone. The dog remained watchful, always trained to notice more than humans could. Ethan trusted that silent awareness. Once the engine turned on, Noah's voice broke the quiet with a question spoken so softly, Ethan almost missed it. "Are they coming back?" "Not right now," Ethan said, keeping his tone steady. "But we need to make sure they cannot find you again." Noah stared at his hands, rubbing the raw skin around his wrists where the cords had cut. "They said Dad told them where I was. They said he already got money for me." Ethan gripped the steering wheel harder. He had expected something terrible, but the boy's calm recitation of it felt like someone was carving words into bone. "You did nothing wrong," Ethan said firmly. "Nothing." Ranger let out a low rumble, not a growl of threat, but one of agreement, as if reminding the boy he was not alone. Ethan drove toward the residential area Noah had pointed to when asked where his father lived. As they approached the neighborhood, Noah began to shrink into the seat. The houses grew older, paint peeling, roofs sagging slightly. It was not dangerous on the surface, but it carried a kind of neglect that seeped into the ground and into the people who lived there. "Do you have neighbors nearby?" Ethan asked. "Sometimes," Noah whispered, "but nobody talks to us." Ethan parked the truck outside a small one-story house, with fading numbers screwed above the door. The curtains were drawn. The lawn looked uncut for months. The silence around it felt uneasy, in a way Ethan knew too well. He stepped out with Ranger and lifted Noah gently from the truck. The boy clung to him again. Ethan's instinct told him to walk away and take Noah somewhere safe, far from this place. But he needed to understand what had happened before he could protect the child properly. Ethan knocked. Footsteps thudded against the floor inside. Then the door opened a crack. Harold Jensen stood in the doorway, a man in his mid-30s, shoulders slumped as though the guilt of years pressed down on them. His eyes were restless, clouded with fear, the kind that came from living under the weight of threats he did not know how to fight. He was not drunk, but he carried the posture of someone who used avoidance as armor. When Harold saw Noah in Ethan's arms, he froze. Noah whispered, barely audible, "Dad." Harold swallowed, his throat bobbing as if he were grappling with something sharp inside. He did not reach for Noah. He did not step forward. Instead, his hand tightened around the doorframe. "You found him," Harold said, voice shaking. I thought they took him already." Ethan stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. The interior told its own story. Unopened bills on the table, a couch sunken from stress more than weight, a faint smell of old cigarettes. This was not a place where a child should ever be left to fear for his life. "Did you call someone?" Ethan asked. Harold flinched. "I did not want to die," he said, a whisper that carried the echo of excuses he had told himself for months. "They said they would kill me if I did not pay. They said Noah was the only thing worth anything." Anger rose in Ethan's chest, but he kept his tone controlled. "So you traded him for your own safety?" "It is not like that," Harold said quickly, almost desperately. "You do not understand what these people do. You do not know what they promised. They said they would take him far away and he would not feel anything." Noah tightened his hold on Ethan's shirt. Ethan took a step forward, and Harold stepped back instinctively. Ranger leaned forward slightly, reading the tension in the room. Harold's fear grew sharper. "You gave your son away," Ethan said, "and you let strangers tie him like an animal." "Please," Harold whispered, voice cracking. "They said I did not have a choice. They said they would come back. They said if I told anyone." A sound cut through the room, the roar of an engine stopping outside. Ethan's muscles tensed. Ranger snapped his head toward the window, ears up, body taut. Noah gasped, instinctively burying his face in Ethan's shoulder. Harold went pale. "They followed you," he whispered. "They are here." Ethan moved immediately. He placed Noah behind the couch and positioned Ranger in front of him. The dog lowered himself, ready to strike. Ethan turned to Harold with a final question, because this mattered now more than anything. "Did you tell them I took him?" Harold did not speak. His silence answered everything. Outside, heavy footsteps crunched gravel. A man's voice called from the porch, cold and slow. "Harold, we know he is in there. Hand the boy over. No hero games." Noah's breathing hitched. Ethan steadied him with a gentle touch. "Stay down. Do not move," he whispered. Ranger's growl deepened, a sound that spoke of loyalty, fury, and a promise to fight for the small, trembling life behind the couch. Ethan stood. The air felt heavier than before, the kind of heaviness that hung in the seconds before violence erupted. He reached for the nearest object he could weaponize, a metal lamp. Not ideal, but it would do. As the doorknob outside began to turn, Noah whispered 4 words that froze Ethan's blood more than any threat from the men outside. "Please, let me go." He lifted his eyes, and what Ethan saw there was not fear of the attackers. It was the belief that he was unwanted, and that cut deeper than any knife. The front door began to swing open, and the chapter ended there, on the edge of something violent, painful, and irreversible. A heavy stillness settled inside the small house as the front door creaked open, letting in a thin slice of cold daylight. Dust in the air shimmered briefly before being swallowed by the shadow of the man stepping inside. Ethan Walker shifted his weight quietly, one hand gripping the metal lamp he had taken as an improvised weapon. Ranger stood ahead of him, body aligned like a coiled spring ready to launch. Behind the couch, Noah Jensen crouched with trembling breaths, clutching the fabric of Ethan's jacket for courage that barely held together. The man entering the house did not rush. He moved with the certainty of someone who had done this before. His name, Ethan would learn later, was Mason Creed. For now, all Ethan saw was a figure hardened by years working for violent people. Mason carried an energy shaped by a life spent enforcing other men's threats. His voice, when he finally spoke, carried a cold steadiness that told Ethan this was someone used to being obeyed. "Harold," Mason called, eyes scanning the room. "You had one job. Where is the boy?" Harold Jensen backed up against the wall, his breath coming fast and shallow. "I did what you said," he whispered. "I told you where to find him. He got picked up before I could do anything. I did not call anyone, I swear." Mason's gaze drifted toward Harold, unreadable. He was not loud, not enraged. He did not need to be. There was a kind of controlled violence simmering under the surface, the kind that came from years of being the hand that collected debts no one else dared to claim. Ethan stepped slightly to the side, making sure Mason's line of sight could not reach Noah. Ranger mirrored the movement with precise instinct. The dog's growl was so low it almost did not make sound, but it vibrated through the floorboards like a warning. Mason's attention locked on Ethan. "You're not part of this," Mason said. "Hand over the kid and walk away. You do that. Nobody follows you." Ethan did not move. "He is not yours to take." "That is where you are wrong," Mason replied calmly. "His father owed a debt. Debts get paid. That is how this works." Ethan studied him carefully. He could strike now, but he could not predict who else might be outside. A man like Mason rarely worked alone. Ranger's ears twitched, catching the distant crunch of gravel. More footsteps, more voices. Ethan felt his pulse slow, not speed up, battle calm. The thing drilled into him through years of training. He inhaled once, quietly, focusing the way he had on missions when every breath mattered. "You do not want to do this," Ethan said. Mason almost smiled. "Everyone thinks they are the exception." Ethan stepped forward. Mason drew a handgun faster than most men would blink. But Ethan did not freeze. He moved. He swung the metal lamp with the full force of his weight. The lamp cracked across Mason's wrist, sending the gun skidding under the table. Ranger launched at the same moment, knocking Mason backward with a powerful impact that sent the man crashing onto the floorboards. "Stay down!" Ethan shouted to Noah, though the boy had already curled deeper behind the couch. Another man burst through the doorway. Younger, leaner, eyes fierce, with the kind of loyalty that bordered on desperation. His name was Jace Turner, a runner for the group, someone who grew up around violence and had never known any other kind of belonging. Jace had been shaped by survival, by the need to prove himself to people like Mason. He charged with a reckless adrenaline that made him dangerous. Ranger intercepted him first, slamming into his legs. Jace stumbled but remained standing, swinging a short baton toward the dog. Ethan tackled him before the strike could land. They crashed into the hallway wall, rattling a frame that hung crooked. Jace snarled, "You do not understand who you are messing with." Ethan replied with a quick elbow to Jace's ribs, knocking the air out of him. Then another strike to the jaw that made the baton slip from Jace's fingers. Mason rose again, fury tightening his voice for the first time. "Grab the boy now!" Ethan reached the baton before Jace could reclaim it. He swung upward, catching Jace across the arm, forcing him back. Noise outside grew louder, more footsteps, more weapons being readied. Ethan's mind raced through scenarios. He could not hold the house forever. He needed to move to get Noah out, but he could not risk leading the boy into open fire. Then something unexpected happened. Harold stepped forward. He was shaking. Fear poured from him. But there was something else, too, a sharp flicker of guilt that finally, painfully, broke through his cowardice. "Stop!" Harold shouted. Mason glared at him as if an insect had dared to speak. "You tried to give your son away," Ethan said without turning. "Fix one thing before it is too late." Harold's face twisted, torn between survival and the last piece of humanity clinging inside him. His knees almost buckled under the weight of the moment. Noah's voice rose from behind the couch, thin and wounded. "Dad, please, do not let them take me." Harold froze. Mason took a step toward the boy's direction, and that was enough. Ethan charged Mason again, this time with no hesitation. He grabbed the man's arm, twisted sharply, and sent him crashing into the coffee table, splintering wood. Ranger tackled Jace again, forcing him to retreat toward the doorway. But just as Ethan gained the upper hand, the sound of several guns being cocked outside froze the room. A new voice called from beyond the door. Deep, controlled, dangerous. Enough. Ethan recognized that tone immediately. It belonged to someone accustomed to command, someone higher in the hierarchy of the group, someone who could make the others stop with a single word. Ranger stiffened, bracing. Harold's face went completely pale. Noah let out a small, frightened whimper. Ethan positioned himself between the doorway and the boy again, gripping the baton tighter. The leader outside spoke once more, slower this time, almost amused. "Ethan Walker," the voice called, "I know who you are, and we are not walking away without the boy." Ethan's heart stopped for a breath. They knew his name, which meant this was no longer just about Noah. It was about him, too, and that changed everything. The doorknob turned again. The chapter ends here, with Ethan realizing he is not facing common criminals, but an organized enemy who has already studied him, planned for him, and now wants something far more dangerous than a frightened child. A tense quiet pressed against the small house as the front door began to open again, the narrow beam of daylight cutting across the floor like a warning line between what was inside and what waited outside. Ethan Walker tightened his grip on the baton he had taken from Jace Turner. Ranger crouched slightly ahead, focused, shoulders low and ready. Behind the couch, Noah Jensen clung to the fabric with fingers that kept slipping from fear. Harold stood near the hallway wall, frozen, eyes darting between Ethan and the doorway as if searching for an escape that no longer existed. The man who entered did not rush or shout. He stepped into the doorway with a controlled calm that felt more threatening than any violent entrance could have been. His name was Rowan Pike, though Ethan only realized that moments later when the man spoke. Rowan carried the quiet authority of someone who led by fear rather than noise. He wasn't visibly larger or stronger than Mason Creed or Jace Turner, but something in his steady movement said he had survived things that had broken men tougher than him. Rowan had been a part of a gang long before these men answered to him. He rose to leadership not because he was the loudest, but because he always found a way to win, even when winning meant sacrificing pieces of himself until nothing gentle remained. "Ethan Walker," Rowan said, as though greeting an old acquaintance he had never met. His tone revealed something chilling. A man who studied his enemies before confronting them. "I was told you were the type who interferes. I hoped it was wrong." Ethan did not respond. A soldier learns the danger of giving a threat too much attention. Ranger growled, the sound deep and focused, but Rowan did not flinch. Instead, he scanned the room, briefly landing on Harold, whose breath hitched. "You made this messy, Harold," Rowan said. "We had an agreement." Harold swallowed hard. "I tried. I told you where to find him." "And then you let a stranger walk away with the product," Rowan cut in. "So now we have to fix your mistake." Noah let out a small choked noise at the word product. Ethan reached back with one hand and touched Noah's shoulder to steady him. Rowan took several steps into the room. Behind him, 2 more men hovered outside the doorway. They remained unnamed shadows for now, but they carried themselves like men accustomed to doing whatever Rowan ordered without hesitation. "You should understand something," Rowan said to Ethan calmly. "We do not need the father. We only need the boy." "Then you do not understand anything at all," Ethan replied. The air shifted sharply. Rowan gave a small nod, almost respectful. Then let us see how far that conviction goes." He raised his hand in a simple gesture. The man outside on the left stepped in first, swinging a metal pipe. Ethan blocked the strike with the baton, but the force jarred his arm. Ranger lunged immediately, knocking the second man to the floor. The room erupted into motion. Ethan twisted the baton into the wrist of the first attacker, using the momentum to slam him into a wall. The man fell, groaning. Another burst of movement flickered in the corner of Ethan's vision. Mason Creed was getting back up, pain twisting his movements, but anger pushing him forward. Ethan pivoted fast. Mason struck wildly with a glass shard he had grabbed from the broken coffee table. Ethan avoided the swing by inches and forced Mason's arm into a shelf, disarming him. Mason stumbled backward, dazed. Through the chaos, Noah crouched lower behind the couch, squeezing his eyes shut. Harold remained motionless, breathing in ragged gasps, torn between terror and something like guilt. But guilt meant little when fear ruled him. Rowan watched the fight without stepping in. His eyes tracked every movement like a strategist evaluating pieces on a board. He waited, not out of fear, but because he enjoyed letting others spend their strength first. Ethan knocked down the man with the pipe and turned just as Jace Turner lunged again, desperate to redeem himself in front of Rowan. Ethan grabbed Jace's shirt, slammed him onto the floor, and pinned him with a knee to the chest. Ranger kept the second attacker pinned with a menacing snarl. Harold finally spoke, his voice weak but trembling. "Rowan, please, just let us go. I did what you asked. I gave him up. I did everything you wanted." Rowan turned to him slowly. "And yet the boy is still in this house." Harold's knees nearly gave out. Rowan took one more step forward. That was when Noah's voice broke through everything. "Please," Noah whispered, barely able to speak. "Please, let me go. He does not want me. Nobody wants me." The words hit Ethan like a blow he didn't see coming. Something hot and fierce surged in his chest. He felt the baton tighten in his grip until his knuckles ached. Rowan looked at Noah with a cold curiosity. "See? Even the boy knows what he is worth," Ethan snapped. He launched forward, tackling Rowan with a burst of controlled force. The two crashed into the hallway wall. Rowan tried to counter, but Ethan drove an elbow into his ribs, forcing him down. The other attackers tried to move in, but Ranger lunged at them, keeping them pinned with a fury sharpened by years of loyalty and loss. Rowan reached for a knife hidden in his boot. Ethan saw the movement, grabbed Rowan's wrist, and slammed it against the floor. The knife skittered under a cabinet. Ethan struck Rowan in the jaw, sending a shudder through the man's body. The fight intensity grew, but Rowan wasn't done. He shoved Ethan back with surprising strength and staggered to his feet. His breath came uneven, but his eyes were still sharp. "You think this ends here?" Rowan hissed. "We will take him. Today or another day. You cannot stop all of us." Ethan raised the baton again, breathing hard. "Try." Rowan stared at him, then slowly smiled, a thin, dangerous expression. "You are making this personal," Rowan said. "Good, because now it is personal for me, too." He whistled sharply, a signal. Outside, the roar of several engines fired up at once. Rowan stepped back toward the doorway, his men gathering around him. "We are not done, not even close." Ethan moved to lunge again, but a sudden loud crack echoed from outside. Someone had fired a warning shot into the air. Rowan slipped out of the house, his men retreating with him. Ranger stood at the doorway growling, ready to chase, but Ethan called him back. He knew pursuing them now would expose Noah. As the vehicles outside peeled away, the house fell into a suffocating stillness. Harold sank against the wall, eyes wide with shock. Noah peeked over the couch, trembling, unsure if danger had truly passed. Ethan forced his breathing to slow. He looked at the broken furniture, the shattered glass, the blood smears on the floor, then at the terrified boy who believed he was unwanted. This wasn't over, and Rowan Pike would return, but not for the reason Ethan feared, for something much worse. The chapter ends with Ethan realizing Rowan didn't simply want Noah for debt. He wanted Noah for something bigger, something Ethan had not yet uncovered. Cold air lingered in the damaged house, carrying the echo of Rowan Pike's threat long after his men had driven away. Broken furniture and shattered pieces of wood lay across the floor like the aftermath of a storm. Ethan Walker stood near the doorway with Ranger at his side, the dog's ears still alert, body tense, watching for any return. Behind the couch, Noah Jensen peeked out with wide, shaken eyes. Harold remained slumped against the wall, guilt and fear mixing into something that made him look years older than he had hours before. Ethan swept the room once more, verifying that Rowan's crew had fully retreated. The silence was unsettling but necessary. He approached Noah, softened his stance, and crouched down. "It is over for now," Ethan said. "For now?" Noah asked, voice cracking. Ethan didn't lie. "They will come again, but not tonight. They need time to plan." Noah lowered his gaze. Every word seemed to sink like weight into his small shoulders. Ranger nudged the boy's knee gently, as if reminding him he wasn't alone. Noah reached out and placed a trembling hand on Ranger's head. That simple touch became a fragile lifeline. Ethan turned toward Harold. "We need answers, now." Harold shivered. "I told you, Rowan wanted the debt paid." "That is not the full story," Ethan said. "He knew my name. He knew more than he should. This is bigger than debt collections." Harold squeezed his eyes shut. They asked about Noah more than once, not just where he was. They asked if he had ever seen numbers, if he repeated patterns, if he talked about shapes. Ethan's pulse tightened. "Why?" Harold wrapped his arms around himself, breathing unsteady. Because someone wants him, someone Rowan works for, someone who pays good money for children who can do things others can't." Noah froze. Ethan spoke carefully. "Explain." Harold swallowed hard. "A few months ago, Noah drew something on the wall, something with circles and numbers. I didn't understand it, but someone else saw it. A man Rowan called Cormac. He visited the house once. Said kids like Noah were rare. Said they could be useful." Harold's voice cracked. "That was the day everything got worse. Rowan told me the debt could be forgiven if I agreed to let them take Noah. I refused, for a while, but things spiraled. They threatened to kill me. They threatened to take him anyway. I was terrified." Harold's confession trembled into silence. Noah hugged himself. "Dad, you still let them?" Harold broke completely then. I know I failed you." Ethan did not allow more guilt to stall action. "What does Cormac want with him?" Harold shook his head helplessly. "I do not know. Rowan never said, only that Noah is worth more than most. They kept saying he had something in his mind they needed." Ethan exhaled slowly. Noah's drawings on the wall, his instinctive patterns, his fear of being a burden. The pieces were forming something frightening, and not because of what Noah could do, but because of how far someone might go to get their hands on him. Ethan stood. "We are leaving." Harold looked up. "Where? Rowan will find us anywhere." "No," Ethan said. "He knows this location, not others." Ethan moved toward the hallway closet, grabbing what little supplies he saw. Blankets, a small first aid kit, a flashlight. Then he lifted Noah gently. The boy, clinging to him like the house itself, was capable of devouring him. As they approached the door, Noah whispered, "Are we safe with you?" Ethan paused. "I will not let anyone take you. That is the only promise I can make." The boy nodded against Ethan's shoulder. They stepped outside into the cold night. The street was quiet, but quiet now felt ominous. Ranger scanned each angle before Ethan guided them to his truck. He placed Noah inside and returned briefly to Harold. "Come with us," Ethan said. "If Rowan is after Noah, he will punish you for failing." Harold's knees shook. "You think I deserve safety after what I did?" Ethan answered only with, "Decide fast." Harold hesitated, torn between shame and survival. Finally, he nodded and climbed into the back of the truck. Ranger leapt in beside him, watching him with distrust sharpened by instinct. Ethan drove. For a while, no one spoke. The road blurred under the truck's headlights. Noah watched the outside world with distant eyes. Harold curled into himself, grappling with everything he had done and everything he feared would happen next. Then something unexpected happened. Ranger sat up suddenly. A soft growl rose in his chest. Not aggressive. Warning. Ethan's senses sharpened. "What is it, boy?" Ranger pressed his nose to the back window. Ethan glanced into the rearview mirror. Two sets of headlights approached slowly. Too slowly, as though matching speed deliberately, as though following. Harold stiffened. "It is them. It has to be them." Ethan slowed the truck, then turned sharply onto a side road. The headlights behind them mirrored the turn. "They know exactly where we are," Harold said in a panic. "Rowan said he would take him. He meant it." Ethan kept his focus forward. "No, this doesn't feel like Rowan." Noah's fingers tightened on Ethan's sleeve. "Then who is it?" The second vehicle pulled closer, revealing a large black SUV. Its windows were tinted. No plates, no insignia. Ethan felt his stomach drop. This wasn't Rowan's crew. This was someone with more resources, more influence, more reach. Someone behind Rowan, someone like the mysterious Cormac Harold had mentioned. The SUV sped up. Ethan's truck vibrated under the sudden acceleration. He swerved left, then right, trying to lose them, but the SUV mirrored him with unnerving precision. Ranger growled louder. The headlights flashed once. A signal. Not hostile. Not friendly. A message. Ethan muttered, "This is not good." Harold hid his face in his hands. "They found us already." Noah whispered, "What do they want from me?" The SUV closed in, its engine building force ready to ram them, and just before impact, the SUV pulled alongside and the back window lowered slowly. A man inside became visible. Not Rowan, not any gang member. A face neither Ethan nor Noah had seen yet, but one that radiated command and purpose. And when he spoke, his voice sent a chill through the truck. "Noah Jensen," the man said calmly, "you need to come with me. You belong to us now." The chapter ends with Ethan forced into a split-second decision, the SUV preparing for another move, and the realization that the true enemy has finally revealed himself. Night settled over the empty outskirts road, the cold breeze slipping past the truck as the black SUV prowled beside it, matching every movement with calculated intent. Inside the truck, Ethan Walker steadied the wheel with one hand and shielded Noah Jensen with the other, while Ranger braced himself on the back seat, a low, determined growl building in his chest. Harold trembled silently beside him, fear bending his posture, shame pulling at every breath. The man in the SUV lowered the window a little farther, revealing eyes that studied rather than threatened, the kind of gaze belonging to someone who had spent a lifetime commanding others. His name, as Ethan would soon learn, was Cormac Hale, the very figure Harold had mentioned, a man with influence threaded through places most people never knew existed. Cormac spoke with a voice that carried unsettling certainty, a tone shaped by years of working behind locked doors and unmarked organizations. He was not a criminal in the ordinary sense, but someone conditioned by powerful institutions, someone who had once believed he served a greater purpose, but had long lost the ability to question the cost. "Noah Jensen belongs to us," Cormac said evenly, as if stating a fact rather than making a claim. Ethan met his eyes without fear. "He belongs to no one." Cormac did not argue. He simply tapped the door once, a signal. The SUV jerked forward, preparing to force Ethan off the road. Ethan swerved sharply, tires scraping gravel as he fought for control. Noah clung to him, shaking. Ranger barked, the sound fueled by protective instinct born from every hardship he had endured beside Ethan. The SUV rammed again, harder this time, pushing the truck toward a ditch. Ethan's mind sharpened the way it had in the field. Every threat narrowed to angles and timing. His training reminded him of men like Cormac, men who broke children for programs, men he had seen operating in the shadows of conflicts no one talked about. He would not let Noah fall into that world. "Hold tight," Ethan said, steadying the wheel. Ranger lunged toward the back window, barking wildly, trying to intimidate the SUV. Harold braced himself, whispering, "I am so sorry," though the words were drowned out by screeching metal. Ethan slammed the brakes, then accelerated suddenly, a maneuver designed to throw off a pursuing vehicle. The SUV overshot slightly, giving Ethan a thin moment to turn onto an unlit service road. Trees enclosed the narrow path, creating pockets of darkness. The SUV followed again, but the terrain slowed it. Ethan breathed once, a soldier's breath, before acting. He stopped the truck abruptly. Ranger jumped down from his seat. "Ready?" Ethan stepped out, leaving the door open. The night air felt sharp, cutting through the tension like glass. Cormac stepped out of the SUV calmly, alone, no men, no weapons drawn, a tactic meant to unsettle. Ethan recognized it, a psychological play. "Ethan Walker," Cormac said, approaching with slow confidence. "You were difficult to track during your service years. I am impressed, and it takes a great deal to impress me." Ethan positioned himself between Cormac and the truck. "What do you want from a child?" Cormac lifted his hand slightly, a gesture of disarming. "The boy has potential, a mind we have not seen in decades. He was born with what others spend lifetimes trying to create. His pattern recognition, his memory retention, his instinctive calculations. We have a place where children like him are taught to use their gifts. You are wasting something extraordinary." Ethan felt Noah's fear behind him like a pulse. He is a child. That is all he needs to be. Cormac exhaled softly, almost regretfully. "You misunderstand. We offer opportunity, structure, purpose. He could help thousands one day." Ethan remembered children he had rescued overseas, children trained to serve agendas they never chose. "He would stop being himself," Ethan said, "and you know that well." Cormac's jaw tensed. A tiny crack in his calm revealed a piece of his past. He had once believed in structure, too. Ethan struck fast. He lunged forward, grabbing Cormac's arm and pinning him against the SUV. Ranger darted to Ethan's side, ready to attack if Cormac resisted. Cormac struggled, but could not overpower Ethan's discipline, honed through years of missions. "Listen," Ethan said, voice low, steady. "This ends now. You follow us, you approach the boy again, you so much as breathe his name, and you will not walk away." Cormac held still, staring at Ethan, not with fear, but with the heavy realization that he had finally met someone he could not bend. "You cannot protect him forever," Cormac warned, "but I see you are willing to try. That may be enough for now." Ethan tightened his hold once more before letting him go. Cormac straightened, composed but defeated. He looked past Ethan toward the truck where Noah peeked out with wide, frightened eyes. Something softened in Cormac's face for just a moment, a hint of understanding from a man who had lost his own identity long ago. "Keep him safe," Cormac said quietly, "before someone worse than me finds him." Then he stepped back into the SUV. The vehicle retreated slowly, disappearing down the dark road until only silence remained. Ethan returned to the truck. Ranger climbed in first, still alert, but calmer. Noah reached for Ethan the second he opened the door. The boy buried his face against his chest, small hands gripping tightly, as if finally believing he would not be abandoned again. "Is he gone?" Noah murmured. "Yes," Ethan said softly, "and he is not coming back." Harold bowed his head, tears slipping down his tired face. "I do not deserve forgiveness," he said, voice shaking, "but thank you for saving him. Thank you for doing what I should have done." Ethan met Harold's eyes. "Protect him now. Start from here." For the first time, Harold nodded with something resembling resolve. They drove through the night until the highway opened before them like a long silver path leading toward something new. Noah leaned against Ethan's arm. Ranger lay close, guarding his small presence with a silent vow. The danger was not gone forever, but tonight they were safe. And sometimes safety is enough to begin again. The story closes with Ethan choosing to take Noah and Harold somewhere far away, somewhere Rowan Pike could never reach, somewhere even men like Cormac would not dare follow, a place where Noah could simply be a child again, held not by fear, but by the unbreakable shield of the man who refused to let the world steal him. Sometimes the greatest miracles are not the ones written in books, but the ones God quietly places in our path when we are at our weakest. Noah found safety in the arms of a man who chose love over fear, and Ethan discovered that even the most wounded hearts can rise again when they protect something pure. In life, we all face moments when darkness feels close, when the world seems too heavy, and when we wonder if anyone sees our struggle. But stories like this remind us that God always sends the right person at the right time, even if we do not recognize the blessing at first. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and may God watch over you and your family, guiding you with light, strength, and peace in every step ahead.